Welcome to Timeless Story Vault, a place where carefully guided experiences unfold beyond the surface of waking thought. Tonight, you are not entering a metaphor or a simple relaxation story. You are stepping into a conscious astral dreamscape, a realm designed to be explored while the mind remains aware and the body gradually recedes into stillness. This journey leads toward the astral plane, not abruptly and not through force, but through deliberate orientation, safety, and slow expansion of perception. Nothing here is rushed, and nothing will ask more of you than simple presence. From the very beginning, you are aware that this space is different from imagination alone. The astral plane you are entering feels structured, intentional, and ancient, as though it has existed long before you noticed it, and will continue long after this moment ends. The atmosphere around you feels calm but alert, like a place meant to be observed rather than passed through quickly. You are here to explore, to understand the contours of this realm, and to allow awareness to stretch gently beyond its usual boundaries. There is no test, no task, and no expectation beyond noticing what unfolds. As your attention settles, the sense of physical surroundings begins to loosen, not disappearing, but becoming less central. The weight of the body fades into the background while awareness remains steady, upright, and clear. You feel as though you are standing at the threshold between inner perception and an externalized astral environment. This threshold does not feel fragile or unstable. It feels reinforced, as though countless travelers have crossed here before you. The transition happens gradually, like eyes adjusting to a vast, dimly lit space. Before you, darkness opens into depth rather than emptiness. Subtle points of light begin to emerge, not sharp like stars, but diffuse, layered, and distant. They form patterns that suggest immense scale without overwhelming you. You sense immediately that this is not open space in the physical sense, but a constructed astral environment, one shaped to hold awareness safely. The space feels observant, not in a personal way, but in the way a great structure responds to presence simply by existing. Slowly, forms begin to resolve from the surrounding dimness. Vast arcs and platforms of pale light appear, suspended without visible support. Their surfaces are smooth, faintly luminous, and marked with subtle geometric lines that shift when viewed from different angles. These structures do not move, yet they feel alive with quiet function, like instruments waiting to be used. You understand without being told that this is an observatory, not for watching stars, but for observing states of consciousness. As you become more aware of your surroundings, the scale of the observatory reveals itself. It stretches outward in all directions, with levels rising and descending into layers of soft haze. Transparent walkways extend between platforms, forming a network that feels both intricate and orderly. Far below, enormous lenses or mirrors drift slowly, turning at a pace so gradual it barely registers. Each one reflects shifting patterns of light that resemble dreams, thoughts, and abstract impressions, rather than images of physical places. You notice that your movement here is effortless. You do not walk so much as drift with intention, guided by subtle shifts in focus. When you direct your awareness toward a nearby platform, you find yourself approaching it smoothly, without strain. The environment responds precisely, as though calibrated to awareness itself rather than physical motion. This responsiveness creates a sense of trust, reinforcing that this space is designed for safe passage rather than disorientation. As you arrive at the nearest platform, you sense a change in clarity. The air here feels denser, though not heavy, as if perception itself has substance. Lines etched into the platform's surface glow faintly, forming slow-moving constellations that reorganize as you observe them. These patterns do not convey information in words, but they carry meaning in a more intuitive form. You sense that they represent layers of consciousness, overlapping states that exist simultaneously rather than sequentially. Looking outward from the platform, you see that the observatory is oriented around a vast central axis. At its core, far in the distance, is a massive circular structure emitting a steady, low glow. It does not pulse or flicker. It simply remains constant. Everything else in the observatory appears aligned to this central presence, as though it provides reference and stability. You feel drawn to it, not by urgency, but by a quiet understanding that it anchors the entire astral space. As your awareness settles further into the environment, subtle sounds emerge. They are not echoes or voices, but deep, harmonic tones that resonate through the space like distant instruments tuned to frequencies below conscious hearing. These tones do not distract or demand attention. Instead, they create a sense of coherence, gently organizing perception and smoothing any lingering tension. The soundscape feels ancient and deliberate, as though it has always been part of this place. You become aware that the observatory is not focused outward, but inward. It does not monitor distant stars or external worlds. Instead, it observes shifts in awareness, thresholds between waking, dreaming, and astral states. The slow movement of light across its structures corresponds to subtle changes within you, though nothing here feels invasive or evaluative. The space simply reflects and stabilizes, offering orientation without instruction. As you drift along the platform's edge, new structures come into view. Tall, translucent spires rise from lower levels, their interiors filled with softly rotating patterns. These feel like instruments of measurement, though not in any mechanical sense. They register presence, depth, and clarity of awareness, adjusting their glow accordingly. You notice that as your focus remains calm and steady, the light within these spires becomes smoother and more uniform. There is no sense of being watched by beings or entities. Instead, the observatory itself feels aware in a distributed, impersonal way. Its intelligence is architectural rather than personal, embedded in alignment and response rather than intention. This absence of figures creates a surprising sense of ease. Without eyes to meet or voices to interpret, you are free to observe without self-consciousness. Gradually, you begin to sense that this outer level of the observatory serves as an orientation zone. It allows awareness to adjust to astral perception without crossing too deeply too soon. The space encourages steadiness, clarity, and patience, qualities that seem to be prerequisites for moving further inward. You realize that deeper regions exist beyond what you can currently see, layered behind veils of soft haze and refracted light. From where you stand, pathways extend inward toward the observatory's core. Each one appears slightly different, marked by variations in light, tone, and structure. None of them call out or insist on being chosen. They simply exist, available when awareness is ready to move deeper. You sense that the journey ahead will involve gradual descent rather than sudden transition, with each layer revealing more refined aspects of the astral plane. For now, you remain at this first threshold, allowing the environment to establish itself fully around you. The observatory holds steady, its vastness no longer overwhelming, but quietly reassuring. You understand that this is only the beginning of the journey, an initial alignment before deeper exploration begins. With the space now clearly formed and stable, your awareness naturally turns toward what lies further within, where the true heart of the astral observatory waits to be approached. As your awareness turns inward, the observatory responds without ceremony. The platform beneath you does not move, yet the space ahead seems to open, revealing additional layers that were previously obscured by soft refraction. What once appeared distant now feels accessible, not through effort, but through readiness. The deeper regions of the observatory do not rush to meet you. Instead, they allow you to approach at a pace that preserves clarity. This slow unveiling reinforces the sense that the space is organized around stability rather than spectacle. You begin to drift along one of the inward pathways, noticing how its surface differs subtly from the outer platforms. The material here appears more translucent, as though light passes through it rather than reflecting off it. Beneath the surface, Faint currents move in slow, deliberate patterns, carrying threads of illumination that shift in response to your focus. These currents feel purposeful, like internal circulatory systems that distribute balance throughout the structure. As you move, the pathway adjusts gently, maintaining a constant distance that feels supportive rather than restrictive. Looking outward, you notice that the vastness of the observatory now feels more structured. What once seemed like open depth resolves into layered rings, each one rotating at its own imperceptibly slow rate. These rings are not mechanical, but harmonic, aligned by resonance rather than force. Their motion creates subtle variations in light and tone, forming a quiet rhythm that anchors awareness. You sense that each ring corresponds to a different band of astral perception, organized to prevent overwhelm while allowing gradual expansion. As you pass between two of these rotating layers, the quality of light changes again. It becomes softer and more diffuse, as though filtered through a fine veil. The harmonic tones deepen slightly, no longer broad and distant, but closer, more intimate. They resonate through your awareness in a way that feels grounding, encouraging attention to remain steady and present. Nothing here startles or distracts. Every element seems calibrated to support sustained observation. New structures emerge as you move further inward. Large curved panels hover in vertical alignment, their surfaces acting like living lenses. Within them, slow-moving patterns form and dissolve, resembling abstract maps rather than images. These patterns feel informational without being explicit, conveying relationships between states rather than scenes or narratives. You sense that these panels register transitions, moments when awareness shifts from one depth to another, tracking movement without judgment or commentary. You become aware that the observatory is not passive. It does not merely exist as a backdrop. It actively maintains equilibrium within the astral plane. Its architecture absorbs fluctuations, smoothing abrupt changes and redistributing energy in ways that preserve coherence. This function is subtle but unmistakable, and it contributes to the profound sense of safety that permeates the space. You are not alone here, but you are also not subject to scrutiny. As your attention stabilizes, you notice how your own presence interacts with the environment. When your focus remains calm and open, the structures around you glow more evenly, their internal currents aligning into slower, more graceful patterns. When a stray thought arises, the light shifts slightly, not dimming or brightening, but adjusting, as though acknowledging the change and compensating for it. This responsiveness feels collaborative rather than corrective, reinforcing the idea that the observatory exists to support, not control. The pathway you follow begins to curve gently, guiding you toward a region where the observatory's geometry becomes more intricate. Here, platforms overlap at different elevations, connected by softly spiraling ramps of light. The ramps do not ascend or descend sharply. Instead, they trace gradual arcs that ease awareness into new perspectives. From each level, the observatory reveals itself differently, offering expanded views without disorientation. At one such overlook, you pause, allowing yourself to observe without moving forward. From this vantage point, the observatory's core appears closer, its steady glow now revealing subtle variations in color and depth. The light emanating from it seems layered, as though composed of multiple frequencies woven together. You sense that this core does not represent a destination in the conventional sense, but a point of convergence where multiple states of awareness intersect. Around you, the observatory continues its quiet activity. Panels rotate, currents flow, and distant structures realign with slow inevitability. There is no urgency in their motion, no indication that anything must be completed or achieved. Instead, the space feels engaged in ongoing calibration, maintaining a dynamic balance that accommodates countless forms of awareness passing through. You realize that this observatory likely serves many travelers simultaneously, each experiencing it in a way that aligns with their own readiness. As you drift onward, the environment begins to feel subtly more intimate. the distances between structures shorten slightly, and the light takes on warmer undertones. The harmonic tones soften, becoming less expansive and more focused. This shift does not signal an ending, but a transition into a region where perception becomes more refined. You sense that you are moving from broad orientation into deeper attunement. You pass beneath a wide arch formed from interwoven bands of light. As you cross this threshold, the observatory's response becomes more pronounced. The currents beneath the pathway slow, and the panels nearby adjust their alignment, creating a brief moment of heightened clarity. It feels as though the space has acknowledged your readiness to proceed further inward, granting access without ceremony. Beyond the arch, the observatory's architecture grows more complex. Structures interlock in patterns that suggest immense age and careful design. Nothing here feels improvised or experimental. Every element appears refined through long use. The surfaces are etched with faint symbols that do not resemble language, but rather geometric expressions of balance and flow. These markings seem to resonate with your awareness, though their meaning remains intuitive rather than intellectual. As you continue, you become aware of a subtle shift within yourself. Your sense of time begins to loosen, not disappearing, but becoming less linear. Moments feel expansive, allowing observation without pressure. This change does not induce heaviness or drowsiness. Instead, it creates a spacious clarity that supports sustained immersion. You feel capable of remaining here, attentive and calm, for as long as necessary. The observatory's inner levels now reveal hints of presences that are not embodied. There are no figures or forms, yet certain regions feel more concentrated, as though awareness has passed through them repeatedly. These areas hold a quiet density, shaped by accumulated observation rather than occupancy. You sense that these concentrations play a role in organizing the astral plane, guiding movement through resonance rather than direction. Ahead, the pathway widens, leading toward a central expanse where multiple levels converge. The glow from the observatory's core reflects off surrounding structures, creating overlapping patterns of light that drift slowly across your field of perception. This convergence feels significant, not as a climax, but as a deepening of the journey's purpose. You understand that moving further inward will involve engagement with the observatory's central functions rather than its outer architecture. For now, you remain in motion, allowing the environment to continue revealing itself gradually. Each step inward reinforces the sense that this space is designed for sustained exploration, not rapid descent. The observatory holds you in steady balance, preparing awareness for what lies deeper within its vast, carefully maintained interior. As you move farther inward, the convergence ahead becomes more defined. The pathways you've followed no longer feel like individual routes, but parts of a larger system gradually aligning. Multiple levels intersect here, not abruptly, but through smooth transitions that preserve continuity of awareness. The observatory's architecture grows denser, its geometry more layered, yet nothing feels crowded or compressed. Instead, the space seems to fold inward with deliberate care, concentrating perception without constraining it. The light here is different from the outer regions. It carries a subtle depth, as though illuminated from multiple directions at once. Shadows exist, but they are soft and diffuse, never obscuring form. This layered illumination gives the impression that every structure is visible from within as much as from without. You sense that the observatory is no longer simply orienting awareness, but refining it, encouraging perception to become more cohesive and internally consistent. At the heart of this convergence, enormous circular platforms hover in quiet alignment. They rotate slowly around a shared axis, each one offset slightly from the others, creating a gentle spiral effect that draws the eye inward. The motion is so gradual that it feels almost still. Yet the cumulative effect is unmistakable. This rotation does not pull you forward. It invites observation, encouraging awareness to synchronize with its pace. You drift toward one of these platforms and settle near its edge. The surface beneath you feels smoother than before, as though polished by prolonged exposure to calm presence. Beneath its translucent layer, streams of light flow in intricate patterns, converging and diverging with quiet precision. These streams appear to represent currents of awareness moving through the observatory, each one guided by resonance rather than direction. From this vantage point, you begin to perceive how the observatory functions at a deeper level. It does not categorize or sort consciousness in rigid ways. Instead, it monitors relationships between states, how clarity interacts with depth, how intention aligns with readiness. The architecture adjusts constantly to maintain harmony between these elements, ensuring that transitions remain gradual and stable. You realize that this central region plays a key role in preventing abrupt shifts that could fragment perception. As you continue observing, subtle structures begin to emerge within the convergence. Tall, narrow columns of light rise from the platforms, extending upward into the layered haze above. These columns are not solid. They shimmer with internal motion, as though composed of overlapping fields rather than material form. Their presence feels stabilizing, anchoring the rotating platforms while allowing them to remain fluid. You sense that these columns serve as reference points rather than barriers. They mark regions of alignment, places where awareness naturally settles into coherence. When your focus drifts toward one, you feel a slight increase in clarity, as though scattered impressions are gently drawn together. This effect is not forceful or directive. It happens naturally, reinforcing the observatory's role as a stabilizing environment rather than an instructional one. The harmonic tones that have accompanied you since your arrival now feel more integrated. They no longer register as separate sounds, but as a continuous field of resonance that permeates the space. You notice how these tones subtly shift as you move, adjusting to your presence without disrupting the overall balance. The result is a soundscape that feels responsive yet consistent, reinforcing the sense that this space is designed for sustained awareness. As you drift deeper into the convergence, you become aware of faint impressions that suggest other travelers. There are no visible figures or distinct forms, but certain pathways carry a residual sense of passage, like gentle currents left behind by prior movement. These impressions are calm and diffuse, indicating that others have passed through without leaving disruption. The observatory accommodates this multiplicity effortlessly, maintaining equilibrium across countless journeys. Your attention is drawn to a broad opening near the center of the convergence, where the rotating platforms align more closely. This opening does not resemble a doorway in the conventional sense. Instead, it appears as a region of intensified clarity, where light and structure become more transparent. Looking into it, you sense additional layers beyond, each one more refined than the last. The observatory seems to be revealing its inner depth gradually, allowing readiness to determine access. As you approach this region, the environment responds with subtle shifts. The platforms slow their rotation almost imperceptibly, and the columns of light adjust their alignment. The harmonic field deepens, becoming more uniform and focused. These changes do not signal a transition point yet. They indicate preparation, a fine-tuning of conditions that supports deeper movement without strain. You pause, allowing awareness to settle fully within this central region. From here, the observatory's scale becomes easier to comprehend. What once felt vast and abstract now feels organized and navigable. You understand that the observatory is not infinite, but extensive, structured to accommodate gradual descent into more interior astral states. Its design reflects an understanding of consciousness as something that expands and contracts rhythmically, rather than moving in straight lines. As you remain here, the space begins to feel subtly more intimate. The distances between structures feel shorter, and the light carries a warmer undertone. This warmth does not induce heaviness or rest. It fosters focus, encouraging sustained presence. You sense that you are approaching a region where interaction with the observatory's core functions will become more direct, though still nonverbal and non-instructional. Within the convergence, you notice faint patterns forming in the air itself. These patterns resemble slow-moving lattices of light, appearing and dissolving without sharp edges. They feel informational, conveying shifts in alignment rather than data or imagery. When you observe them closely, they seem to mirror subtle changes within your own awareness, reflecting states of readiness, clarity, and depth without commentary. You begin to realize that this region serves as a gateway, not in the sense of passage from one place to another, but as a calibration zone. Here, awareness is gently adjusted to operate within deeper astral layers without losing coherence. The observatory's architecture absorbs excess fluctuation, redistributing it through its network of platforms and currents. This process feels seamless, requiring no action on your part. As you drift nearer to the opening at the convergence's center, you sense that beyond it lies a region governed by different principles. The structures there appear less defined, their edges softened by increased translucence. Light behaves differently as well, flowing more freely and responding more directly to shifts in focus. This suggests a transition into a more interior astral environment, one less structured by architecture and more by resonance. For now, you remain just outside this inner threshold. The observatory holds steady, its central region fully revealed but not yet entered. You feel neither urgency nor hesitation, only a quiet readiness forming. The space has prepared you carefully, aligning perception and stabilizing awareness. With the convergence now established and the inner layers visible, the path forward begins to open naturally, inviting the next phase of the journey deeper into the astral observatory's core. As you remain near the inner threshold, the observatory subtly reconfigures around you. The convergence behind you stabilizes, its slow rotations settling into an even, almost imperceptible motion, while the region ahead grows clearer. The opening you've been approaching does not widen, yet it becomes easier to perceive, as though the space itself has decided you are ready to see it more fully. The distinction between structure and atmosphere softens here, and the observatory's architecture begins to feel less like a series of platforms and more like a continuous field shaped by intention. You drift forward, crossing into the inner region without a marked boundary. The moment of transition is gentle, defined not by sensation but by clarity. Light behaves differently here, no longer confined to surfaces or flowing along channels. Instead, it fills the space evenly, responding directly to shifts in awareness. The absence of sharp edges creates a sense of openness that is both expansive and contained, like standing inside a vast, perfectly balanced instrument. At the center of this region is the inner astral lens. It is not a physical object in the traditional sense, but a spherical field of heightened coherence, suspended within the observatory's core. Its presence is unmistakable, yet it does not dominate the space. The lens appears as a subtle distortion in the surrounding light, a gentle curvature where patterns of illumination converge and slow. You understand intuitively that this lens is not for viewing outward realities, but for focusing and stabilizing inward perception. As you approach, the harmonic field deepens further. The tones you've sensed throughout the observatory now feel fully integrated into your awareness, no longer registering as sound, but as a steady internal alignment. This resonance supports attention without demanding it, allowing observation to remain relaxed and sustained. The environment feels exceptionally calm here, not because it lacks activity, but because every element operates in balanced coordination. Within the lens, faint impressions begin to form. These are not images or scenes, but shifts in density and texture that suggest layers of awareness overlapping gently. You sense that the lens gathers and refines astral states, smoothing transitions between levels of depth. It does not impose order. It reveals coherence that already exists beneath surface fluctuation. The effect is grounding, encouraging awareness to settle into a stable, unified field. You notice that as you remain near the lens, your perception becomes more continuous. Discrete thoughts lose their sharp edges, blending into a broader field of noticing. This does not feel like dullness or detachment, but like expanded clarity, where awareness holds more without effort. The observatory supports this state, its architecture subtly adjusting to maintain balance as your focus deepens. Around the lens, the space is marked by slow-moving arcs of light that trace wide, graceful paths. These arcs feel like trajectories of attention, mapping how awareness moves through astral depth over time. Their motion is deliberate and unhurried, reinforcing the sense that this region operates on a scale beyond urgency. You sense that many such paths intersect here, representing countless journeys that have passed through this lens without collision or disruption. As you observe these arcs, you become aware of a new quality within the observatory: quiet continuity. The sense of beginning and end softens, replaced by an impression of ongoing presence. This region does not feel like a midpoint or a destination, but like a stable interior space where awareness can remain for extended periods. The observatory seems designed to hold this state indefinitely, accommodating depth without collapse. Subtle variations in light begin to reveal additional structure within the lens. Fine, lattice-like patterns appear and dissolve, suggesting frameworks that support coherence at deeper levels. These frameworks do not restrict movement, they provide reference, allowing awareness to orient itself even as form becomes less defined. You sense that these patterns adjust dynamically, responding to each traveler's unique rhythm. As you remain here, you notice that the observatory's responsiveness has shifted. Earlier regions reacted visibly to changes in focus, adjusting glow and alignment. Here, the response is more internal. Rather than changing its appearance, the space influences the quality of perception directly, smoothing fluctuations before they fully arise. This creates a profound sense of ease, as though effort is no longer required to maintain clarity. You drift slightly closer to the lens, not pulled by force, but guided by a quiet sense of alignment. The curvature of light around it becomes more apparent, and the surrounding arcs slow even further. Within this stillness, you sense an invitation, not to move forward immediately, but to remain present and allow deeper attunement. The observatory seems to recognize that sustained presence here is as meaningful as continued movement. As your awareness settles into this refined state, you begin to perceive subtle distinctions within the astral plane itself. The space beyond the lens feels less architectural, more fluid, as though the observatory gives way to a region governed primarily by resonance rather than structure. You understand that crossing fully into that space will involve a further softening of form, a transition from observation to immersion. For now, the observatory maintains its supportive role. The lens holds steady, its field of coherence gently encompassing you without enclosing. The harmonic resonance remains constant, and the arcs of light continue their slow trajectories. Nothing here urges you onward, yet nothing blocks the path ahead. The environment communicates readiness through stability rather than instruction. You sense that this inner region marks the final phase of orientation. Beyond it lies a deeper astral state where structure becomes minimal and awareness itself shapes experience more directly. The observatory has fulfilled its role gradually and deliberately, preparing perception without overwhelming it. As you remain near the lens, the space feels complete, coherent, and quietly expectant. With the inner astral lens now fully revealed and integrated into your awareness, the path toward deeper immersion begins to clarify. The observatory does not recede, but it gently loosens its hold, allowing perception to expand beyond architectural support. The next phase of the journey waits just beyond this refined stillness, where the astral plane opens into a more fluid and intimate depth. As you remain within the steady field of the inner astral lens, something subtle begins to shift. It is not the environment itself that changes, but your relationship to it. The observatory no longer feels like a place you are standing within. It feels like a condition that has already been absorbed. The lens continues to hold its quiet curvature of light, yet its presence becomes less distinct, as though it has accomplished its purpose and no longer needs to assert itself. Awareness rests more fully in its own balance, supported but no longer guided by visible structure. the surrounding arcs of light thin and stretch, their paths widening until they dissolve into broader currents. These currents do not move in lines or loops, but in slow, expansive flows that feel more like states than trajectories. You sense that what once appeared as architectural organization is now revealing its underlying function, to ease awareness into a field where direction is no longer necessary. The observatory remains perceptible, but it has softened into a background coherence rather than an active frame. Ahead, the space beyond the lens opens without forming an edge. There is no doorway, no threshold, no moment you could point to and say this is where transition occurs. Instead, the environment gradually loses its distinction between interior and exterior. Light spreads evenly, no longer anchored to surfaces or structures, and the sensation of distance fades. You are not moving forward so much as allowing perception to extend outward without resistance. In this expanded region, the astral plane reveals itself as a continuous field of presence. It does not resemble a landscape, nor does it behave like a void. It feels inhabited by a gentle intelligence that organizes itself through harmony rather than form. Subtle variations in density suggest depth, but there is no sense of separation between layers. Everything exists within a single, unified continuum that responds to awareness as naturally as water responds to gravity. You notice that thought here behaves differently. It no longer arrives as discrete units with beginnings and endings. Instead, impressions arise softly and dissolve before becoming fixed. Awareness remains clear, but unburdened by commentary. This state does not feel empty. It feels spacious, as though attention has been freed from the need to focus narrowly. The astral plane supports this openness, holding perception in a stable, expansive field. Within this continuity, faint presences begin to register. They are not entities in the conventional sense, nor do they appear as figures or forms. Instead, they manifest as zones of heightened coherence, regions where the astral field feels slightly more organized, more attentive. You recognize these as the astral gatekeepers, not as guardians who block or permit passage, but as stabilizing intelligences that maintain balance within this plane. Their presence is calm, ancient, and entirely non-intrusive. The gatekeepers do not approach you. They do not communicate through words or images. Their awareness intersects gently with yours, creating a sense of mutual recognition without exchange. You understand, without being told, that they are aware of your presence, simply because awareness itself is the medium here. Their role is not to guide you directly, but to ensure that the astral field remains navigable, coherent, and safe for those who enter it intentionally. As your awareness aligns with this deeper continuity, you sense the observatory fully releasing its structural influence. What remains is a vast, softly luminous field where orientation arises naturally from resonance rather than landmarks. You feel no loss at this transition, only a deepening sense of ease. The architectural clarity of the observatory has given way to an experiential clarity that feels more intimate and expansive at once. The astral plane here feels timeless, not static but unhurried. There is no pressure to proceed, no expectation of progression. Presence itself becomes the primary mode of experience. You notice that even the sense of being a distinct observer softens, replaced by a more fluid participation in the field around you. Awareness does not dissolve. It broadens, holding more without strain. Subtle currents move through this space, not as winds or waves, but as shifts in tone and warmth. They carry no direction, yet they gently influence the quality of experience. As these currents pass through you, they seem to smooth any remaining edges of tension, not by removing them, but by integrating them into the wider field. The astral plane accepts everything that enters it, reorganizing experience into harmony without effort. You may become aware of a growing stillness beneath this motion. It is not the stillness of inactivity, but of perfect balance. Movement and rest coexist here without conflict. The gatekeeper's presence reinforces this equilibrium, ensuring that the field remains stable even as awareness expands. Their quiet intelligence permeates the space, subtle and constant, like gravity in the physical world. As time loses its usual structure, you sense that duration here is flexible. Moments stretch or compress without consequence. This allows awareness to linger naturally, exploring depth without urgency. You are free to remain suspended in this state, observing the gentle interplay of currents and coherence, without needing to decide what comes next. Gradually, a deeper quiet begins to emerge beneath even this expansive awareness. It is not imposed, nor does it signal an ending. It feels like a natural settling, as though the astral plane itself is inviting attention to rest more fully within its core. The field remains luminous and present, but its activity softens further, becoming more uniform, more serene. You sense that this deeper quiet is not separate from awareness, but a refinement of it. The astral plane does not pull you towards sleep, nor does it push you onward. Instead, it offers a stable, receptive environment where awareness can choose to become simpler. The gatekeepers remain present, their influence steady and reassuring, maintaining the integrity of this state. As the currents slow and the field grows more even, perception becomes less about noticing and more about being. The astral plane holds you effortlessly, requiring nothing in return. The transition toward stillness unfolds naturally, without instruction or expectation, guided only by the inherent calm of the space itself. This deeper phase of the journey does not yet conclude. The astral field continues to open inward, offering a quieter, more settled dimension beyond even this expansive continuity. Awareness remains clear and supported, poised at the threshold of a profound resting state that has not yet fully arrived. The space around you waits patiently, ready to deepen further when the time feels right. As the astral field continues to soften around you, the sense of continuity deepens into something even more subtle. The gentle currents that once moved through awareness now slow until their motion is barely perceptible, like water settling after a long, unhurried tide. Nothing disappears, nothing collapses. Instead, everything finds a natural resting state, as though the astral plane itself is easing into a deeper equilibrium. You remain present within it, supported without effort, held without pressure. The astral gatekeepers do not withdraw, but their presence becomes quieter, more diffuse. They are no longer perceived as distinct regions of coherence, but as a pervasive stability woven through the field itself. Their role has always been to maintain balance, and now that balance feels complete. The astral plane no longer needs active organization. It sustains itself through harmony alone. Awareness is free to remain open without needing to orient or adjust. Light across the field dims by degrees, so subtle they are felt rather than seen. Luminosity does not vanish. It settles into a low, even glow that seems to come from everywhere at once. There are no focal points demanding attention, no patterns inviting exploration. The environment has shifted from revelation to holding, offering a quiet continuity that feels deeply reassuring. You sense that nothing further is required of you here. Your awareness naturally simplifies, not by force and not by intention, but by ease. The expansive clarity you've been resting within begins to gather inward, not contracting sharply, but becoming more centered and gentle. Thought remains possible, but it no longer arises with urgency or definition. Impressions drift through as soft textures or tones, then dissolve before they can form into narratives. The astral plane responds to this settling with a corresponding stillness. Subtle variations in tone smooth into uniform calm. The sense of depth remains, but it no longer calls attention to itself. It feels like floating within a vast, quiet interior, where movement is unnecessary and rest is implicit. Presence becomes less about noticing and more about simply existing within the field. Time here loses even its abstract flexibility. Moments no longer stretch or compress. They become irrelevant. There is only the steady continuation of being, supported by an environment that has fully aligned with rest. The astral plane does not guide you towards sleep, yet it creates the conditions in which sleep can arise naturally, without transition or decision. Your sense of form grows softer. The boundary between awareness and environment becomes less distinct, not dissolving completely, but loosening into comfort. You are still yourself, yet the effort of maintaining that distinction fades. The astral field holds you in a way that feels deeply familiar, as though this state has always existed beneath waking experience, waiting patiently to be remembered. The remaining light dims another degree, settling into a warm, diffuse glow. The field feels quieter now, not empty, but complete. The gatekeeper's stabilizing influence continues invisibly, ensuring that everything remains balanced and safe as awareness rests more deeply. There is no sense of departure, only of remaining where you already are. Gradually, the last traces of active perception soften. Awareness becomes broader and quieter, less inclined to observe and more inclined to rest. The astral plane does not change further. It simply continues to hold this calm, allowing attention to sink gently into stillness. Any remaining impressions drift away on their own, leaving behind a simple, untroubled presence. The environment settles fully. Light rests at its lowest, most comfortable glow. Motion becomes imperceptible. The astral plane remains steady and attentive, but asks nothing of you. It is content to hold awareness in silence, allowing rest to emerge naturally from the depth of calm you now inhabit. In this quiet holding, the journey does not end so much as it resolves. The exploration has gently concluded, not with a boundary, but with a sense of completion that requires no acknowledgement. Awareness is free to remain here as it transitions into sleep, carried by the same stable field that guided you inward. The astral plane continues its quiet vigil, balanced and undisturbed as awareness drifts into deeper rest. Nothing pulls you away. Nothing asks you to stay. The field simply remains, calm and steady, as sleep arrives on its own time, soft and unannounced, held within the gentle continuity you've entered.